This is the beginning of a story I've never fully told. I was unfulfilled, I was stressed, I was traveling all the time. My view on what success meant had been defined by the financial aspect of life. But little did I know, I was about to embark on the darkest period of my life. My wife at the time decides to leave. That kind of opened up this new lens for me and this new paradigm of what it really means to shift and create your own reality. I had a deep curiosity to understand myself. However, sometimes the ego wants to bring you back into the place of familiarity. I knew at that time that I didn't want to do this anymore. And I knew that there was something bigger for me to explore. Ayahuasca came out of nowhere. It was about facing my shadows, letting go of past identities. It was dissolving into the oneness. My healing is through sharing the story of my journey. There was a time when everything I thought I was had to fall away. My marriage, my career, my identity. Love has never been outside of me, waiting to be found. It's always been within me, waiting to be remembered. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the very first episode of the Chrysalis Awakening. This space was born not from ambition, but from transformation. Not from the need to speak, but from the desire to share what has been deeply lived, felt, and remembered. This is the beginning of a story I've never fully told. The journey that brought me to this moment. And in truth, it's not just a story about me. It's about all of us. In this first episode, I want to dive into my story, not just to share where I come from, but to dive into the transformation that shaped everything that followed. We'll explore the early years, the foundations of my worldview, what drove me as a child, how I stepped into a life I thought was right, marriage, success, money, only to find it wasn't fully aligned with my soul. We'll explore the illusion of success, how I climbed the ranks of my career, chasing achievement, living abroad, building an impressive life on paper, while silently breaking on the inside. How that disconnection led to illness, to separation, and ultimately to stillness. I'll share the moment I first sat with plant medicine, how it cracked me wide open and brought me to my awakening. We'll talk about healing, about facing the shadow, about the ego deaths, and the beautiful pain of shedding the layers that no longer serve us. And how through that, I began to remember love, not as something outside of me, but something I am. I'll also take you behind the creation of my current business, True Cinnamon, not just as a brand, but as a reflection of my healing. How the idea came to me, how I followed intuition rather than a business plan, how I've come to see business as a spiritual practice, rooted in trust, intention, and alignment. And finally, I'll share the deeper why behind this podcast. This isn't about teaching. This is about walking together. This is about remembering who we are beyond the noise, beyond the expectations, beyond the fear. This is about awakening. The Chrysalis Awakening is a space to explore what it means to transform, to dissolve the old, to unlearn, to become. I want to start off by just giving you context around my upbringing and what drove me as a child. I had a unique experience of being half Kuwaiti, half Italian. My father's from Kuwait, mother's Italian, but I grew up between Kuwait, Los Angeles, born in Switzerland. So my whole life has been shaped around traveling and living in different places, different cultures, different people. And that experience really was the engine that developed the skill set for me to be able to adapt and learn to communicate with people around the world, which really shaped me through my career and also where I'm at in my journey today. I always had this feeling of there was more to life than I was experiencing. Where I grew up, it really was a bubble. Kuwait is a small country. Generally, people, because of its tribal origin, families know each other, whether it's a first, second, or third degree. And with that came this this limited perspective on what life was like, going back and forth between Kuwait and Los Angeles. Um, I always felt like an outsider. I was never fully from Kuwait. I was never fully Italian, and I was never fully American. I was this combination of all three different cultures. Because of that upbringing and that limited perspective, growing up, I had this deep curiosity and also resistance towards authority. I was not great in school. In fact, I failed twice, had to repeat both sixth grade and ninth grade during my high school year. I just felt disconnected with school and had no interest in what was being taught and the education that was being provided. Um, Whenever I would question or inquire with any sort of deep curiosity, I was always met with resistance and that this is just how things were. And so that really stuck with me as a child. It was hard for me to take what was being given as truth. And today, what I've learned is that many truths can coexist, that an opposite of a truth is just as much of a truth, that all of it is relative, it's all perspective. That also led to kind of this spiritual disconnection. Uh, I couldn't relate to the religion that I was culturally meant to practice. Kuwait is a Muslim country, and I was always inquiring in class and just could never get an answer other than this is just the way it is. And that never really sat with me as a truth. So in hindsight, that actually was one of the drivers for me to always question what was being told or what was being done and how could things be improved, how can we do things differently. And I was always trying to see things from a different angle, struggling with a lot of abandonment issues. My parents had split up when I was young, didn't receive what I needed in terms of love and presence from my father, and my mother was living on the other side of the world. So there was a lot of deep rooted trauma that I never really worked through. And as a child, um, with this resistance to authority, it just made this combination of what looked at the time as a kid who just didn't get their act together. I mean, I had teachers tell me I would not amount to anything, and I was always looking to escape from what was taking place in my environment. And it wasn't until the later part of my high school years where I had this deep curiosity about the subconscious mind, curiosity around telepathy, curiosity around behavior. And I came across two books that really changed my perspective on life: Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that kind of opened up this new lens for me and this new paradigm of what it really means to start to shift and create your own reality. 2 months before my high school sweetheart graduated, we met, fell in love, and she went off to the US to study out in Orange County. I was still finishing up my last year. And as I started to finish up my last year, things started shifting for me in terms of my education. I was doing a lot better. My grades were improving. I was taking class more seriously. And it was this eye opener that, oh, it's a choice. It's always been a choice. I've chosen to not be involved, not participate. And now I had this feeling and desire to really see what I can do. And when I graduated and moved to the US, I went to a community college out in Orange County for a couple of years and then went to Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles and graduated top of my class. And it had nothing to do with my inability to be a great student. It was all a choice. And I always felt like I wanted to explore the world outside of the bubble that I was in. And now was my chance. I was going to take on university. I was going to take on my career, and I was going to have the success that people doubted me for, and to prove things to my family, and um, to just bring me to a place of self-worth. And that all came from a place of lack or scarcity. But at that time, it was this deep ambition, deep driver of mine. One day I just had this opportunity to meet a gentleman who was introduced by a family friend, and he sat with me. He had a really successful marketing agency back in the day. We really connected, got along. And in a moment, I told him what I was doing with one of the internships I was working at, which was real estate finance. And he kind of looked at me and said, "Hey, I mean, if you're interested, I'd love to get you involved in with what we're doing. Funny enough, this is what I do right now. I own a real estate investment company. I think they had about 250 to 300 million of assets under management at that time. At that point in my life, I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. This is a big company. Um, they were pretty small, but it was all family. It was the principal himself, and they had ultra high net worth capital from Japan. And so it was this experience of um, stepping into this new paradigm, which was getting access to what the professional world was going to look like for me. I said, yeah, I'd be super interested. And I ended up joining his company. I worked with him for about a year. I learned everything from acquisition, sourcing opportunities on the deal side, reading and underwriting financial models. Not that I was good at it. And about a year in, he sits down with me and he goes, "Hey, I see there's a lot of activity coming out of the Middle East. You're really smart. You're sharp. I like you. And all the capital that we've been using, which has been majority coming from ultra high net worth investors from Japan, is starting to dry up. And we'd love to really expand our business. And we're thinking of raising money for a fund. You're from that region. You know the people. Would you be interested in partnering with me and launching a fund?" And of course, at that time, I knew nothing. I just knew that I had this hunger to go out there and make something happen. So I immediately said yes. And we basically got to work. And by the end of that year, um, the chief operating officer and I went out to the Middle East, close family and a few friends, but I had no relationships in that space. And by the time I got there, I had set up meetings with the largest sovereign funds, pension funds, um, endowments, pretty large institutions. We were raising $100 million fund. And to me at that time, that was a lot of money to go out and raise. I'm this 22-year-old kid speaking to the chairman and CEO of some of the largest institutions in that region. And after the trip, I walked away raising $0. And it was the biggest and greatest lesson I learned. It taught me to know the audience. In everything I do, knowing who you're speaking to is so important. Whether you're building a business, whether you're selling a service, whether you're doing this and talking to you. And at that time, I didn't know who I was speaking to. I didn't know who my core audience was relative to what we were trying to achieve with that fund. Most of them couldn't write $100 million check and be the whole ownership of the fund. They had restrictions on how much ownership they could have. So that was a really beautiful lesson that I ended up translating into the next phase of my career. When I did graduate from school, I had now this really interesting experience, and I ended up getting a job again in real estate private equity, and was with a much larger firm, publicly traded institution. And this felt like, okay, now I'm playing with the big boys. And they were about to launch their latest fund. It was going to be $1 billion+ fund. And within 7 to 8 months, I ended up raising my first $150 million check. It was the largest ticket size in the fund series. And now I just stepped into a role where I still was in trust and surrender. I had no expectation that I was going to raise any money. It was like it was like the universe was just allowing things to unfold so naturally, where yes, I was working, I was traveling, I was showing up, but there was almost this sense of guilt and shame that I should be doing more, but it felt so natural. It was like at every turn something was opening. I look back on that and realize how much of the trust and surrender I had experienced in my earlier part of my career. But as you start to bring that success in and rise through the ranks and get more recognition, the ego starts to come up and is really strong. And now I started to be in this constant state of anxiety and fear of what can I lose? So after raising 150 million, the firm asked if I would move to London and have the opportunity to raise and launch their first European strategy. I took that immediately uh, and knew that that was going to be the next phase of growth for me professionally. And so went out there, raised a few hundred million in that strategy. And by this time now, I'm making great money. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We're living in London, living in a great neighborhood. I had all the things that I thought I wanted. I had all the things that I thought would make me feel more valued, that would prove something to myself and prove something to the people around me. I was unfulfilled. I was stressed. I was traveling all the time. And my view on what success meant had been defined primarily by the financial aspect of life. The more money I had, the more success I brought in, the more happy I would be, right? The typical cliche. But little did I know I was about to embark on the darkest period of my life. In December 2019, my wife at the time decides to leave. We had a few months of shift in the relationship. We weren't feeling like we were meeting each other. I was completely, deeply unconscious in the relationship. It was a big shock to me. Um, and that experience opened up this door into knowing myself. When my ex wife left, I was so deeply in the despair and suffering that I was experiencing. I had a deep curiosity to understand myself. And of course, 2 months in, COVID happens. From that point, I didn't see her for the next 2 years. And I couldn't accept any other job. I just felt like this was not for me. And there was something more that I needed to explore. There was no thought, there was no analysis. It was a feeling like this is what needs to happen. Resign from my job and end up moving back to the US. And this embarks into this next cycle of growth, of pain, of ups and downs for the next few years. But what I really wanted to embark on was opening up this creative side and allowing the creativity to flow through me, which I had suppressed for so long. And when I got back, I ended up spending a year doing something that I had always loved and wanted to do when I was younger as a profession, which was be a recording artist. And I spent a year going into recording studios, recording my own music, recording with other artists. And I just was seeing this flood of creativity coming through me. I was living off my savings, making music. There was no direction in terms of where I was meant to go. I was just feeling into the process that felt so right for me. I had job opportunities come my way, but I still felt like I wasn't ready to take them. And this opportunity came where I started feeling, okay, I need to make money again. I don't want to just be aimless. I wasn't doing much with the music other than I was really in this creation mode. However, most times the ego wants to bring you back into the place of familiarity. I was getting all these inquiries again to help with capital strategy and capital raising, and decided to launch an advisory firm. And it started taking off. I moved to New York, and all the things that were once what I dreamt of doing, I was doing again. And the disconnection started to happen after about a year in, that I didn't want to do this anymore. And I knew that there was something bigger for me to explore. And all these little things I was doing were just tweaking and making little improvements here and there. But I needed a real breakthrough. And this took me into this journey, this next phase of breaking through the illusion, finding that there's much more to the magic of life than I had ever experienced. Like anybody who's ever experienced plant medicine, it's usually a calling, and it's not something that I had searched for. And ayahuasca came out of nowhere. I got connected to a mutual friend, and I had this deep urge and calling to explore the medicine. And just like that, I was invited to an ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica. And for me, it was a full yes. I didn't even think about it, didn't really know much about it. It was just a full yes. And that first journey changed everything. Everything I had ever believed in, all the old belief systems that I had carried were completely dissolved. I had gone through a death that I had never experienced, and it was releasing and shedding this old belief system, this old identity that I had built up over the years. The identity as a professional, identity of money being my main driver, the identity of the power that I wanted to accumulate, the identity of all the things that were not from myself, but they were from all the influences in my environment, all the influences from family, friends, society. And this completely shattered it all. I grew up in a culturally Muslim household, but I didn't practice. And so I grew up pretty atheist, and then later on agnostic, was never seeking a spiritual journey. And on my first experience, it opened up the floodgates to what life is about, and experiencing consciousness, that I am pure consciousness, experiencing the divine, experiencing that life is more than the attachment to the identities of the self, to the career, to money, that we come from a place of deep love. And it was an incredibly beautiful experience. I had the opportunity to shed layers of healing that needed to take place for many years, forgiving my past relationships, forgiving my family, forgiving myself. And as I started to do these things, the way I felt about life was starting to change. And that everything is just a perception of reality. And how you perceive your life is really how you coexist in that reality. That our thoughts create our actions, and that our actions create our state of being. And that state of being becomes our habits. And we get locked into this cycle. And when you're deeply unconscious and you're deeply in the autopilot state, we forget. We forget who we are. And this whole process was a remembrance. And it was about facing my shadows, letting go of past identities. It was dissolving into the oneness, experiencing life as one pure consciousness. And that the separation is just the veil. It's a veil for us to experience life through the divine. And having this experience changed the way I came back into my day to day. And it became this process of integration of the spiritual and into the material, integration of doing things from a place of alignment with the soul, feeling connected to something that's much greater than myself, experiencing what true abundance is. That abundance is not the amount that it sits in your bank account. That true abundance is an ever expanding state of unconditional love, of material and financial prosperity, boundless energy, and creative flow. And we all have that. And that was my awakening into myself. And the deeper I dove in, the deeper I understood who I am. And that the power of love is is everything, and experiencing unconditional love beyond the comprehension of even the human mind. Because love is so transactional, it's so conditional in our experiences. Love is not something to be found, it's something to be remembered. And through my journey, I've learned that love isn't about searching for the perfect person or fixing someone or holding on to someone. It's about presence. It's about seeing others, not for what they've accomplished, not for what their potential looks like, but simply for the sacred invitation to share space with them as they are. And I really believe that every relationship, every connection has always been a mirror for me, showing me that love has never been outside of me, waiting to be found. It's always been within me, waiting to be remembered. And in that remembrance, I see my own reflection. I am love. And love being the greatest gift to experience, and feeling like that's the calling I'm here to share and spread. Love for the work I do, love for the people and the relationships I come across, love for existing, period. And coincidentally, during this process, it opened up the doorway to the thing that I am now called to build, which is my current company, True Cinnamon. During that process, I had discovered how much anxiety I had around caffeine. And so I cut out caffeine. I wanted something that would overall improve my health. I wanted something that would be pure and natural. And I had issues with cholesterol. Statins weren't really sitting with me. And I just wanted something that could support me in my general health. And that's how the idea came with True Cinnamon, which is a cinnamon water. I saw drastically how eliminating the caffeine from my body was improving my level of presence and decreasing my level of anxiety. After coming back from ayahuasca, first thing that they'll tell you is don't make any big decisions for the first 2 weeks. And of course, I come back. First thing I do is pick up the phone and call my clients and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll be here and help you guys transition to find someone, but I think this is the end of the road for me. A light bulb went on, and I felt so aligned with doing this. And I've never done CPG before. This was going to be my first experience. And so I decided to move back to Los Angeles and did a small little event. Feedback was incredible. And I just knew that this is what I need to do. And I was just going to surrender to it. I wasn't going to resist it. It was a big commitment for me, but it just felt right. It was like I knew I had to do this. And what I've learned through my journey is every moment that I had met with resistance has always been a deeper message. There was more there to uncover than I had even thought. And part of this experience has been embodying that practice. And embodiment is so critical because to step into this becoming, to step into the new reality, you have to come from a place of alignment. Coming out of the ayahuasca journeys, I was completely breaking down every element of my past belief systems and needed to create something from anew. Everything was just unraveling beautifully. Branding was coming together so well, was really aligned with the vision. All these little pieces, the packaging, the design, the name, it just like came so effortlessly, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like I was co-creating with the universe. The lesson is lean in when it's uncomfortable, lean in to the unknown. It's funny because in my previous life, I saw the trajectory, I saw the path. It was very linear, it was very clear. I would work my way up through the ranks, become a managing director. I'd have enough money to provide for my family, have the kids, and eventually retire and then go out and explore the world. But it never resonated with me. This was me stepping into my becoming, where really trusting, following my deep intuition, doing things from a place of deep intention with a mission, And true alignment was my calling. That was my dharma. That is my dharma. And the process of building a business is a spiritual process. It's a process of growth. It's a process of trust. It's a process of alignment. It's not for the faint of heart because you don't know. There is no known, and the only known is the unknown. And to be comfortable with that, I love every minute of it, including the moments that are hard, that are not going my way, because I have this deep belief that every experience, every lesson that I'm coming across is a lesson that will help me grow into the next version, into the next stage, and that it's always working in my benefit. So now that you have context of my overall journey and story up until this point, what is the inspiration behind launching the Chrysalis Awakening? And why am I feeling called to share this space with you? See, for a very long time, I have always struggled to want to share my authenticity, my journey, my story. In the past, it was always a paradigm of not feeling it was worthy enough to share, that there was no value in it. And what I've learned today, and what my truth is today, is that my healing is through sharing the story of my journey, and that to heal others is to heal oneself. This podcast for me is about walking this journey together with you. It's not about teaching, it's about sharing, it's about learning, it's about growing together. The intention is to have fun with it, to explore, to dive deep into my path and my process as an entrepreneur, as I continue to develop personally, to sit down and talk to guests that are going through a process, have beautiful and unique gifts to share in this world and stories to tell. I don't have an expectation other than to be present with you, to be open, to be authentic, and to be transparent. This journey has been a process of unlearning everything I thought I knew and dissolving old belief systems. And I come into this with the Zen or beginner's mindset, seeing the world from fresh eyes, free from past conditioning. And really, the bigger mission here is to use my voice to help others raise their awareness and consciousness, to support others in finding their true dharma or purpose. So, what is the chrysalis? A chrysalis is the sacred cocoon stage in a butterfly's transformation. The Chrysalis Awakening is more than just a title. It's the metaphor for what this journey has been for me. There was a time when everything I thought I was had to fall away. My marriage, my career, my identity. It all dissolved. Not because I failed, but because something deeper was trying to emerge. The chrysalis is that space, the sacred pause between what was and what will be. It's where we lose the old story and remember in the truth of who we really are. This podcast is about that moment, the messy, the beautiful, and holy process of becoming. Thank you for showing up with presence, for meeting me this moment with openness, and for walking this journey home together. See you next time.